Well, everybody, as the title says, this video is going to talk about rabbit housing. So before I get into this, two little housekeeping tips. One is Ginger and I are kind of filming this together. She has filmed some of this already, and I'm going to be piecing in with her stuff, some of the stuff that she's noticed about it and some tips that she has. And also, as I'm characterizing all these rabbit videos, your results may vary. You know, we're currently in New Jersey, going to be moving to Kentucky. I expect that there will be some housing differences just in those two locations, same rabbits. So just keep that in mind. You know, your results may vary on this, although I will tell you that I am sharing with you what has worked, what has not. I encourage you to check our other rabbit videos. There will be some more coming. Again, we're doing a series on this. It kind of give you an idea on if meat rabbits is right for you, their housing conditions, and all that other stuff. So there's lots to cover when it comes to rabbits, so keep that in mind. So there's a few things about rabbit housing that is important. Very first thing I want to start with is ground versus hutch. So there is a debate out there in the rabbit community specifically about meat rabbits. Well, you can't keep them on the ground. I guess it really depends. And as I said on the onset of this video, results may vary. We have had no problems keeping them on the ground. There are some things you need to do if you are keeping them on the ground. First thing is you need to move the crate, whatever they're in, on a regular basis. If it's tight slats, like if the slats on the bottom are close together, you are going to probably have to, you know, put some gloves on and scoop out like any poop or hay or anything that's in there. You know, just kind of keep it clean. Crates that we use, which I'll talk about in a moment, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them have big slats. It kind of makes it so that whatever is left, when you slide it across the ground, it doesn't stay in the crate. It gets left behind. Tip number one is moving them every day or every other day. If you've got a bigger crate and you've got one rabbit in there, you're probably not going to have to move it every day. You know, maybe every other day or maybe even every 3 or 4 days, depending on how big the crate is. So just keep that in mind, but constant moving. For one, it gives them fresh grass, right? Which is saving you on food, but it also creates a cleaner environment because you don't want them being in their own poop and their own urine. It's just not healthy for them, and it's not healthy for you either if you're going to turn around and eat them. So just keep that in mind. The second tip about keeping rabbits on the ground, and really this is not just on the ground, but I would say especially on the ground, is diatomaceous earth. So I had no idea what diatomaceous earth was until my wife told me. There are some consensus out there that kind of says like, well, you know, it doesn't really work, blah, 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 blah. Does it? Can I swear on a stack of Bibles here today that it does work? It definitely, I would say probably. I mean, is it one of those things where maybe our rabbits are just so good and we've never had worm problems? You know, because I have processed several that have been on the ground, never had any problems. Is it just that we just don't have problems and maybe the diatomaceous earth isn't doing anything? Sure, it could be. I don't know, but I do use it regularly with them. Now, the thing about diatomaceous earth is there's several different things you can do. What I do is I just mix it up in the food. It's not really gonna like stick to the pellets like in globs. It's really just gonna kind of coat them to make it kind of nice so that, you know, that it's not like giving them globs of it. Also, if you have a real problem, like if you have one crate that just for some reason has a lot of bugs or something in it, you can just like throw it on the floor of the crate. That will help keep like bugs and junk and worms and stuff out of there. And also the other thing about diatomaceous earth that's really nice is it's food grade. Now, some people have said, oh, you don't need to use food grade. I use food grade. I'm eating them. I don't want to test it. But food grade diatomaceous earth is what we use. It's not all that expensive, guys, and you just need a little tiny bit. I mix up their food, and I think it's like a 20-quart bucket, and I use maybe like half a cup. You don't need to go overboard with it. You don't need to do it all the time. As a matter of fact, I just do it like for the ones that we're processing. If I know I'm going to process, you know, these particular rabbits next week, they're going to get diatomaceous earth probably about starting a week out, and probably for 3 or 4 days, just because it's just a precaution. Like, you know, we need to make sure that the meat is good when we process them. So just kind of keep that in mind, have it on hand. It's very cheap. I mean, one big bag, and Ginger uses it with the chickens too. So keep that in mind as well. I think it was a 25-pound bag, has lasted us well over a year. And it should for you too. The key is with it, you don't want it to get wet. Do not let it get wet. Make sure it's in a dry place, somewhere where animals can't get into it, and you know, where it's kind of just by itself. That's the key with diatomaceous earth. Once it gets wet, it's got to go. So diatomaceous earth is a great thing to have. I recommend it for everyone, not just rabbits really. Like I said, chickens, it's suitable too. All kinds of different animals use it. So I think it's a great thing to have on your homestead just in general. One other note on diatomaceous earth, it will make them very thirsty. So ensure that they have lots of water available. If you've got one of the 32 or 64 ounce feeders and you put it in there, you give them food with it on there, and it's like half full, and you're like, oh, they're not going to drink it. Even on a cool day, they will. Make sure the waters are full because they will drink. So that's a couple tricks just for you guys, you know, who are just thinking about having them on the ground. It's totally fine. We do use hutches for mamas.
Hey everybody, I asked Nick if I could help with the rabbit housing video because I do help. You know, we talked about how our roles kind of overlap there, and one of the things that I work on maintaining is the housing. So we have a couple different sets of housing, and I'm going to show you one set of hutches. This is a hutch that is in need of some repairs, but friends of ours gave it to us because they weren't currently doing rabbits, so we were very appreciative. So this was the first one that we put into use. It's got 4 bays. Underneath, what I do is you want to make sure your hutches, anytime you do hutches, you want to make sure that it's on dirt. Reason for that, it's going to help with smells. You're not going to have nearly the smells because a lot of what smells is going to get absorbed down to the ground. And 2, it just makes cleanup a lot easier. You can see I have started pulling out because I go through about every couple weeks to a month, and I'll take this and I'll put it on the garden, or I'll put it in the chicken compost area and just keep that clean so that never builds up to a point that that's causing any smell issues for them. These are Tractor Supply hutches that we have just done makeshift platforms to get them up off the ground. And same thing, I'll go through every couple weeks to a month depending on how much buildup there is, clean that out, put it in the gardens, or put it in a chicken composting area. The key is just to keep rotating that. As long as it's on the ground, it's going to keep your smell limited. These guys are just up on concrete blocks, and then I have wood 2x4s, which is just what I had, and then we have tin. This area is under a big huge tree, so that's why we have a lot of the mamas and babies over here to keep them extra cool. It really helps to have that shade all day long. These were multiple litters of 9 and 10 babies, and they've done well. We haven't lost too many. You're always going to lose a few, especially with the bigger litters, because I'll tell you, any mamas, if you've ever nursed 1 baby, can you imagine nursing 10?
So we do use hutches for mamas just because it's easier for us. Like if we got a whole row, we don't have to move around the whole yard, you know. Also because mamas are prone to digging. So it does create a problem, you know, with digging. Now you're probably saying, well, they all dig. Yes, they do. But honestly, I mean, I've had some where they are diggers, and you just use the ones with closer slats. The ones that are just diggers, guys, there's nothing you're going to do about it. You know, if a rabbit wants to dig, it's going to dig. You're just going to have them. So put the ones that you know dig in cages with, you know, closer together slats so that they can't dig in between the slats. I had one just a week ago. He never dug before that I noticed, and he got out. He was one of the small ones. I came out, and he's like halfway across the yard, you know, doing his thing. Rabbits will kind of get out. Sometimes we've had several escape, but they never get very far. And to be honest, they're not all that hard to catch. If one of your rabbits does get out, you know, for whatever reason, whether they've dug out or whatever, the easiest thing that I found to do is take a milk crate and just slowly lower it. They can get out of the little handles on it, but by the time they do, like, they don't have enough time to figure that out before you could just lift it up, you know, just lift it up one side of it and grab them real quickly. It's great to catch them with, and it doesn't hurt them, right? I mean, like, you're just setting it over top of them, you know, open part down, of course, so that it's like a little, you know, like you're setting a little box on top of them just to kind of keep them in place while you can, you know, get your bearings and grab. So that's just something that just to start off with, because it's such a common question. Ground or hutch, I don't really think it matters. To be honest, I mean, other than mamas, it's a lot easier to put them in a hutch. Honestly, other than that, don't think it matters too much. We've had no problem either way. So now the next point on housing, and this really only applies to summer. One common misconception about rabbits is, that they need to be inside. No, rabbits like cold. They like really cold. If you've ever processed a rabbit, you know they have a lot of fur. Okay, the cold doesn't bother them. I mean, it would have to be like -40 for it to become a problem. But they've been out, mine have been out -10, -20, and they're fine. Cold, really, in my experience, has no effect on them at all. However, heat does. So heat stroke with rabbits, especially adults and young ones, like the teenager ones, the ones that are like 4 and 6 weeks old, probably okay. But they need protection, guys. You've got to use something in whatever kind of crate you're using. You've got to have something over top of it. I was able to get some of this corrugated metal that works awesome. Just put a brick on top of it just to keep it so the wind won't blow it. It works great. Also use tarps and whatever you can on the side just to kind of keep them protected. I don't worry about protecting the grow out cages too much, because if they get a little wet in the summer, it doesn't hurt them. If they get wet in the winter, then it becomes a problem. But other than that, like I said, the cold doesn't affect them. As long as they're dry, they're fine. In the summer though, heat stroke is a big problem with rabbits. So here's what we do. Last year we used the bottles. We used just like water bottles, Gatorade bottles, whatever we had. Went around at night, collected them, put them in the freezer, and took them out around noon the next day when it was the hottest. Yeah, that works. You can do that. But if you have done that, you're like, that's a huge pain in the butt. And you're right. So here's what we use. These are actually, they're Bentgo. I don't know, there's some kind of brand. Found them on Amazon. These are supposed to be cold for about 4 hours, which is all you really need, even on like 100-degree days. If you put it out at noon and it's good till like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, they're fine. I mean, as long as they're not in direct sun, which goes back to having something over top of the cage. As long as they've got shade, it's okay. But if it is very hot, you need these. I can't stress this enough. You can do the bottles, but these work great. They're on Amazon. I'll put a screenshot up so you guys can see it. But the best thing about these is, I know what you're probably thinking is, oh, they're sealed, right? These are sealed. You can't take this off. This is a sealed unit. Oh, it could hurt the rabbits. Well, probably not, because the nicest thing about these is they are non-toxic. Now, non-toxic to humans does not necessarily mean non-toxic to rabbits, but there's a pretty good chance they are non-toxic to rabbits. I haven't tested it, and none of them have even tried to chew it. I have found no chew marks on any of these, and we've been using these for a couple weeks now since it started getting hot, no problem. So the rabbits are not really like chewing these things, and not only that, but even if they were, I don't really think it's that big of a deal, because again, they're non-toxic. You do need to get non-toxic stuff. Don't try to use anything that doesn't say non-toxic. I would really like to have gotten the ones where you could pop the lid off and just put water in there. I couldn't find any, so I had to use those. Now, those were not cheap, as you've seen, but they work great. And the nicest thing is, they're easy enough and small enough. I could fit like 30 of them in a, just a regular grocery bag, and just put them in the freezer. When you do put them in the freezer, do put them in a bag, because just in case there was any kind of like poop or anything on it, you don't want to get it with your food. Or maybe you have a separate freezer you could put them in, even better yet. There's lots of things to really kind of think about in the summertime, because, again, they need protection from the sun at the very least. And then you also do need, on really hot days, especially if it goes from cool to really hot, they do need something, because they just don't have time to adjust. So the water bottle method works. Also, these, like I said, it's just easier, right? For 20 or 30 water bottles, it would take up like a huge trash bag. These just take up a little grocery bag. And hey, if it's really hot and I see there's a rabbit having issues, like, some showing signs of like heat exhaustion, put 2 of them in there. It doesn't matter, right? They're small, they're easy to use. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend those. I think they work out great. So there's nothing really that we do in the wintertime. We might add like burlap around the sides of the cage, just to protect them from wind, because if it is very cold, you don't want them to be in the wind, because if they can receive wind, they can also receive, snow and rain, and that in the wintertime is a problem. In the summertime, we do like to keep the cages open, just as long as they've got ample shade. I know I've said it a lot, but rabbits need shade in the summer. No doubt about it. So as far as housing goes, this is something that I think is going to be one of the hugest tips on this whole video, and it's going to save you a lot of money. We got into rabbits, as many of you know, last year about this time. And our initial thing was we were going to do a colony. The colony didn't work because I couldn't secure it in such a way to keep the rabbits in there. It was a mess. I'm not saying colonies don't work. I know a lot of people have them. If you are one of those people who have a successful rabbit colony, comment below. Like, we want to hear from you, because we had a lot of trouble with it. So we started this. We really didn't know much about the rabbit housing. We had a friend give us the hutch that we have, and then I'm like, well, what am I going to do about cages? So I got this brainstorm to use dog crates. Now, if you're going online, Walmart or Amazon, you're going to find that dog crates are just as expensive as rabbit cages. I had shown you guys in the first video in this series, Are Rabbits Right For You?, the Tractor Supply crates, which is, we do have several of those, and they are okay. However, they are really poor quality, and yet they are still 35 bucks. Okay, so they are not cheap. Some of them are even 40. So they are not cheap. You know, you're spending that kind of money for a rabbit cage, but it's poor quality. So the dog cages, again, if you're going online, you're looking like, well, dog cages are more than that. Well, two things. First of all, if you're buying them new, of course they're more expensive. There's all different sizes, right? But the nicest thing about dog crates, a lot of people have them, at least up here. All of my dog crates, all of them, with the exception of one, that was for my dog, are used. Now, here's the cool thing, guys. Most of the dog cages that I have cost, ready, about 10 bucks. On average, these dog crates cost me about $10 a piece. Some of them were cheaper. Some of them I did pay like $20 for, but not many of them. To be honest, like, I went to a yard sale. I was driving by down the road from us, and I saw a yard sale like 2 weeks ago. And I always look for dog crates, right? And I looked, and they had a dog crate out there. Well, it didn't have the plastic in it, which if you're doing the rabbit thing with dog crate, that doesn't matter because you don't want the plastic in there, right? The whole thing is they have an open bottom, you can get grass and all that kind of stuff. So you're taking the plastic out. So I went up and I asked the guy, I said, how much for that dog crate? And it's a medium-sized dog crate. It's a nice size. $5 for a dog crate. For a rabbit crate, it would have cost me $35. So you guys can see, you know, if you're buying 10 crates and you're saving $20 a crate, you're saving 200 bucks. And to be honest, it accomplishes the same thing. I prefer the dog crates over the Tractor Supply crates for two reasons. One, much better quality. Much better quality. You got to figure these things were meant to hold a dog that doesn't want to be in there. The metal is thicker. They are better designed, and I think they're great. The quality is just better. So think about that, right? Because that is also huge in this, is a quality. But again, most people have dog crates, guys. Like, most people have them in a garage. Oh yeah, you know, my old dog had them and I don't need them anymore, so here you go. You could pick them up so cheap. So housing rabbits, if you are looking to buy like the KW cages, I don't blame you. They are probably the best on the market right now. They are nice. And probably when we get down to Kentucky, we may even buy them, or I've seen people make them. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do, but I'm not against buying those cages. I'm just saying, like, especially if you're going to keep them on the ground, which to use the dog crate method, they have to be kept on the ground because the slats in the cage are too far apart. Their feet could fall through, they could fall through. So it doesn't work unless they're on the ground. But if you've got a little space, you know, to put them, dog cages on the ground are the best way, in my opinion. The other thing about this is space. So talking about, you know, where they live, their housing and stuff. If you say, well, I live in a city, I only have like 3/4 of an acre, you can raise rabbits. Where I bought my first breeding rabbits was in like a little city. Like, the guy had like maybe an acre, probably not even that. And it takes so little space for rabbits. Almost anybody can do it. I've seen people raise them in their basement. I wouldn't do that, but hey, it's all possible because they don't need a lot of space. They're not loud. So there's a lot of different options. Like, if you are limited and you say, well, I don't have enough room for chickens or goats or whatever, you probably have enough room for rabbits. So, I mean, like, I would say here, if I had a little better organized, which they're kind of spread out now because, you know, there's certain things like we want them to weed around flower beds, which is really nice. That's another added benefit. But if they were all together, like if I had them cage next to cage, like next to each other, guys, I mean, it wouldn't take up more than like maybe like a 20-foot by 20-foot space, maybe, you know, and I have a lot of rabbits here, so the space is great. Like, that's really the coolest thing about this. You can do it in such a small space. And so all that stuff said, guys, like the housing of the rabbits is just, it is an awesome kind of cool thing to like think about, like how you want to do it and all that kind of thing, and how you're going to raise them and where you're going to raise them. It's such a great experience, really, to raise these animals. So one more thing about housing. This is not, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to include this in the breeding video or in this video. I might wind up including it in both, but I am going to say it here, and that is nesting boxes. I mentioned it in the first video, right? But if you're raising meat rabbits, I mean, chances are you're going to be breeding them. And if you're going to be breeding them, then you need nesting boxes. I had mentioned in there about like stainless steel ones. I've seen those. I don't like them. I like the wood ones. So 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch thick wood in a design similar to what you see will work. You don't need anything special. The one thing that you do want to do, whatever cages you have, you want to make sure you're making it big enough for the rabbit, but small enough to fit through the door of the cage. So, you know, if you make a nesting box and it's too big to fit in the cage and you got to dismantle the cage, that kind of defeats the purpose. You want to make sure that it fits in the door. I say that because one time I used 3/4 inch wood because it was what we had, and it was like way too big to fit in there. So, you know, just something to think about if you are breeding them, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the breeding video, but it is part of their housing. You do need to think about nesting boxes of some kind if you're going to be breeding them. This is really just kind of an in-depth view of housing options for your rabbits. You know, there's all kinds of different ways to do it. You know, if you're breeding rabbits, you're probably thinking, well, talk about grow out housing, which I will talk about in the breeding video. I didn't just, you know, for those people just trying to house rabbits, you know, like they're breeders, maybe they're just starting, I didn't want to put that in this video, but it will be in the next video. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit and different options. But for now, guys, thank you so much for watching. We do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And the next video that we are going to talk about is feeding. What do we feed them? How do we feed them? How often do we feed them? So keep an eye out for that video. It will be coming to you in the near future, and we encourage you to stick around because there's so much that we can learn together about rabbits and meat rabbits and raising them. It is one of the coolest things I've ever done. So thank you for watching. God bless you all.